Learn to forgive yourself for things that only time could have taught you.
Welcome to the Secrets of Being podcast. I'm Dr. Dawn Earhart Whitty, your guide on a transformative journey of personal development and discussions of universal truths. Join me and a panel of life coaches and spiritual leaders from around the world discussing how to handle some of life's greatest challenges. We will be sharing stories of love, faith, and inspiration with you, our faithful listeners, to live your happiest and most fulfilling life, full of purpose and passion for yourself, your families, and the world. We are here to be the change we wish to see. Let the conversation begin. Hello, and welcome to the Secrets of Being podcast. Today, I am so honored to have Dave Roberts with us. Dave is a teacher. He's a podcast host of the Teaching Journeys. He is a podcast guest, a blogger, a writer, a father, a grandfather, and a great grandfather. And I love that you include that in your title because I always say, like, my proudest title is being a mom. So, Dave, welcome.
Don, well, thank you. I'm excited to be here, and got to thank Portia Booker for hooking us up, and we had a great pre-chat conversation. I think we could have done a podcast episode with our introductory conversation.
Oh, I 100% know that. I 100% know that. And yes, shout out to Portia. She is the best. I love her very much. So before we get started, I always love to start the podcast off with a quote. And I was doing some research on you, and you have a guest blogger article on Huffington Post. And I love the pull quote that they used at the beginning. Um, this is it. Bootsy was a trusted companion and friend. He was patient, tolerant, and loved unconditionally. I believe what he inspired in me the most is a reverence and respect for all of creation and the understanding that we're truly all connected. And I love that so much because that's one of the things that I believe so much in this world is we are all connected. Mm-hmm. So can you tell us a little bit about that quote and then give us a little bit into your journey and what got you to have that understanding? Were you raised with that, or is that something that you've come to understand through life?
Well, Don, I think it's something I came to understand through my own personal tragedy. I started blogging about, about death and dying probably around 2007. And as you know, individuals who embrace the field of thanatology or the study of death and dying, it isn't because of professional choice. It's usually personal tragedy that gets us there. And I never woke up one day and said, I want to study death. I mean, that was the last furthest thing from my mind. But in order to talk about Bootsy, I have to talk about my daughter because that's the tragedy that has really def defined the path that I'm taking today. My 18-year-old daughter, Jeannine, and I call it transitioned from the physical world to the spiritual world, March 1st, 2003, of a very rare and aggressive form of cancer called the velar rhabdomyosarcoma. It was a connective muscle tissue cancer. Her malignant tumor originated in the bottom of her foot. She injured her foot in a freak accident during her pregnancy with, and she was diagnosed about a little over 3 weeks after giving birth to her first and only child, Brianna, who is now going to be soon to be 24, and is she has two daughters of her own. So, as you mentioned in the bio in the introduction, I'm a great grandfather now. So, in addition to being a grandfather, um, and so that's kind of, and Bootsy was Jeannine's favorite cat. Bootsy was a gift to my daughter from her best friend one Christmas and Bootsy lived for about 21 years. He transitioned to Rainbow Bridge in 2016. So that would have been 1995, probably when Jeannine was about 11 years old. Um, when Jeannine transitioned, Bootsy made it his mission to get me out of bed in the morning. He'd be out at like 4:30, 5 o'clock in the morning. I'd say, Bootsy, Bootsy, come on, let me sleep. And he just meow. Okay, Bootsy, I'm up. He got me moving when I couldn't move. That cat loved me when I couldn't love myself. And with everything that happened. I blamed myself, Dawn, for good 2.5 years that my as Jeannine's father, my one job was to protect her. And I could protect her from anything, from boyfriends, but I couldn't protect her from what she got. Prior to her diagnosis, I was finishing up the requirements for my master's degree in social work. I was doing, a field placement internship, working full time. My wife, Sherry, handled, all the caretaking duties with her pregnancy, made sure everything was good. But I was so busy trying to finish up my degree, I forgot, I didn't pay attention as much as I believe I should have to what was going on with my daughter. Her foot swelled to the point where it wasn't responding to any type of treatment. In April of 2002, she opted, or yeah, April 2002, she got a MRI. She didn't want to do it any sooner than that. She didn't want to do it any sooner than that. That- She didn't want to do it any sooner than April of 2002 because she didn't want any type of radiation or anything to affect her child. Once the Brianna was born, they basically did an MRI of her foot, found an undefined 8 centimeter mass at the bottom of her foot, biopsied it. It was a stage 4 malignant tumor. So, and I know that, and so that's, that's basically how that all transpired. We were given literally, Dawn, a death sentence when we went to the doctors. We went to Dana-Farber in Boston because they're one of the best pediatric sarcoma research centers in the country. And where I live in upstate New York, sarcoma isn't one of our specialties. In a 5-minute consult, they said there's no cure for your daughter's cancer. The only cure that we have, the only chance that we have is for for your aggressive chemotherapy for your daughter's cancer to go into remission when you can find a cure. So, with that, as I saw the tears streaming down my daughter's face, we both knew what that doctor was saying. Unless there's a miracle, your daughter's going to die. Now, I'm going to backtrack and give you three, and I know I'm going all over the place, but it's all going to come together, trust me. May 2nd, my granddaughter's born. May 19th, I complete the requirements for my master's in social work degree from SUNY Albany. May 26th, my daughter's diagnosed with a rare form of cancer. June 2nd, in Boston, we're told that unless there's a miracle, your daughter's going to die. So, in the space of a month, my life turned on a dime. And and then she transitioned, as I mentioned, March 1st, 2003, with hospice services. She always loved animals. She was an animal caretaker at Spring Farm Cares, where they took in animals who were abused, neglected, and she was able to develop a connection. She also loved cats, and as I mentioned earlier, when you asked me about Bootsy, Bootsy was her favorite cat. He became my cat after she transitioned. He was a big part of my support network that got me moving. When it was time for him to transition, it was a very sad time for me. Um, but there was a lot of serendipity that also occurred and I mentioned that in the article. Um, Crow medicine has always been something that I've aligned, not always been something, but I aligned with that probably about 7 years in my journey. Crow is about sacred law as opposed to human law that can explain the things that are unexplainable from human law perspective. They teach us to overcome our fears. They're resilient. They're adaptable. And I really take a lot today from Crow medicine. When Bootsy transitioned, after we buried him in the backyard, it was raining, and that's the title, Birds in the Rain. There were three crows that came and were just cawing. I think cawing their tribute to Bootsy. And and at the end of that day, I looked outside and I told Bootsy how much I loved him, how much he meant to me, how much he helped me, and I just told I said I asked Crow to take a message to Bootsy that I loved him and that I would never forget him. The minute I said that prayer, Dawn, three crows started flying off in the distance. Just when he transitioned, I was there when they gave him the sedative. He was, and I put this in the article as well too, he was scratching and he was looking up above. And I thought, well, maybe he wanted to fight Father Time's time and stay a little longer. But when he was alive, we had a prayer card, a picture of my daughter Jeannine on the refrigerator. He would go up to that card and scratch at it, meow, which told me that I knew he was connected to her. And animals are very intuitive anyway, because of their high alpha brainwave activity. The veil between this side and the other side is pretty much non-existent. He would scratch and he would meow. And I kind of figured what my belief was that Jeannine was waiting for him and was ready to take him home. I wrote that article in 45 minutes when I was at the height of my grief. The title of the article was inspired by a Pearl Jam song called Release. There was one line in that song that said, that mentioned birds in the rain. And I got the title, and then the rest of it just fell into place. That was honestly probably one of my favorite blog articles. And the other thing is that we are all one. Cats and dogs, they share 70 to 80% of our DNA with us. Bootsy didn't care that I was a two-legged specimen. I didn't care that he was a four-legged specimen. Where we bonded was our mutual unconditional love for each other. And that got me through some very tough moments. Like I said, he loved me when I couldn't love myself. And then he passed the mantle on to Zoe, the other black cat that we had. He knew instinctively. He he knew he was dying. I believe 6 months before he knew his time was short. He gave Zoe my lap and said, "Here, you're his human now. I'm going to show
Yeah,
you how
take
to,
the torch.
yeah, take the torch. I'm going to show you how to take care of him." So that's how Bootsy, Jeannine, and I just said, "Hey, we're all connected just by that one strand of just unconditional love. It doesn't matter who we are, where we come from, what culture we're from, what our species is, whether we're animal, cat, dog, fish, doesn't matter.
Yeah,
We're all aligned. We are all one." And he taught me that. He taught me that.
I I love that. And again, I am so sorry for your losses. I mean, to lose a child, I can't. I don't even want to think about what that would feel like. But I've lost my dog. I've lost 14 dogs, and I've lost numerous cats, over the years, in different ways, and it hurts your soul. And I don't care what anybody says, like, oh, it's just a dog, or oh, it's just a cat. No, love is love, and love, like that loss of love in the physical, it hurts. But what I want to really talk to you about, and this is the conversation that we had was so beautiful, is we death, I think, is one of the hardest. Loss and death is one of the hardest things we can experience in this human lifetime, right? Because that it feels so finite. But you and I have talked about what happens beyond and the
Hmm.
things that we have, the messages, the synchronicities, the symbols, and the signs that we get since our loved ones have passed over. And one of the reasons, this podcast is this episode specifically is so important is I want to help other people know that there is something beyond this
Hmm.
physical life. And I would love for you to share some of the experiences that you've had with your daughter, with Bootsy, that make you know that like you can be at peace with that loss.
Well, I never always firmly believed in the survival of consciousness. I was always a science-based guy. There wasn't any room for non-scientific explanations in my world. I was very Isaac Newton-esque. I believed in, what you experience through your senses, and it has to be tangible. It can't be anything that is non-scientific. Well, things changed for me, obviously, after my daughter transitioned. I started to experience things that I thought were signs, but I still had trouble wrapping my head around because of the fact that I was so science-based. There was one time that I was walking my granddaughter Brianna around the block in her carriage, and there was a butterfly, and we know monarch butterflies are one of the universal signs of symbols of our loved one's presence. And this butterfly just was following us. Okay, This butterfly was following us. And I started thinking, because I was thinking of my daughter at the time and walking Brianna. And I'm thinking, yeah, I've heard about this, but I'm not sure where this aligns. Or I'd be going to the gym to work out, and there was a song on the radio. A Goo Goo Dolls song would come on. The first concert I ever took Jeannine to was the Goo Goo Dolls and the Gin Blossoms. So I'd be thinking of her, and a song by the Goo Goo Dolls would just come up randomly, in the gym. So these were things that started to get me to think, but I couldn't wrap my head around it. What turned the corner for me was 7 years after, through pure serendipity, I met an interfaith minister by the name of Patty Farino, who I found myself at her house in November of 2010, and where, you know, we, where she facilitated a spiritually transformative experience that allowed me to believe in the survival of consciousness after death. And it started getting me to explore, using my scientific curiosity, to explore the past things that had happened to me. I realized that what had happened to me on that walk with Brianna was a sign. I realized that hearing a song on the radio when I was thinking of my daughter was a sign, because a sign is usually, you can't objectively validate somebody else's subjective experience. All you can do is choose to understand that experience. And a sign is always a product of what's happening in the present moment. And for me, when I was thinking of my daughter, boom. So, and then I just started exploring. I think we talked about this in our introductory conversation. Brian Weiss's Past Lives and Many Masters, with his work with a woman who had 86 incarnations of her soul in the physical experience, 13 of which contributed to her present problems. So I started reading Brian Weiss. I started exploring, with Patty's guidance, Native American teachings of animals and medicine, all of these things. And I was able to discover that I didn't have to abandon science, but I could embrace other non-scientific perspectives and understand how that could affect my well-being, how that combination could affect other individuals' well-being, and how it can provide clarity. And there's been, I mean, I can go on and on and on for another hour, but I've seen hearts, and I saw a heart on my kitchen floor. I've seen hearts in coffee cups. Numerology, Jeannine transition 3-1. So anytime I see 31, um, I think, I'm thinking of my daughter. I feel her presence. Another thing, and this is something that, and I'll have to send you this picture after the program. But I have two good friends, and they were visiting their one of they were visiting a relative out in Alaska, and they traveled on the Denali Highway. Now, the Denali Highway, Don, is a 135-mile stretch of land in remote Alaska. I When they got back, they said, "Come on," they wanted to go out to dinner, so we went out to dinner, and they gave me a picture. On mile marker 31 was a raven, and okay, now get this. Ravens, when they see any type of human contact, or sense anything, they just fly off in the distance. But my friend Tammy and my friends Tammy and Kathy told me that raven stood there as if to say, "Take my picture already." Now they knew of my daughter's transition. They knew when she transitioned. They're both on paths. They're both very intuitive, and they said this was a sign from your daughter. And I believed that because, I mean, what are the odds of a single raven posing on mile marker 31 in the middle of the Denali Highway when there's 135 mile markers? That raven chose that one and posed and stood there as if to say, "Take my picture."
And your
And there
friends
was,
happened to just be at that place at that time to take
Mhm.
that picture for you.
Yeah. Now, some of the naysayers, yeah, exactly. And some of the naysayers, Don, would say, "Well, that sign didn't come directly to you." Well, yeah, it did. Because once it came to my friends, it came to me.
Yes.
That sign came to me. And that's just more proof positive that the survival of consciousness exists, particularly when our loved ones come to individuals other than ourselves. Um,
Yes.
my wife has had powerful dream visits with my daughter in it. I've had, dreams where my daughter, and dream visits are probably the most convincing and I think probably the most impactful form of after-death communication. Bill and Judy Guggenheim wrote a book, Hello from Heaven, where they documented, I think, 17 different categories of signs. And back in the day, this was 1996, I think they interviewed individuals who'd never had a previous near-death experience, with 60 million of them had a dream visit from a deceased loved one. So if we are open to it, and we are open to the fact that we live in a multidimensional universe, our loved ones can communicate. But here's the other thing. We can also create bonds with them. I'm going to show you something. This is, what does this look like to you?
A fan, a mini fan?
Yeah. You know those little deodorizing fans that you
Yeah.
put in the vents? It makes your car smell
Hmm.
all truck smell nice. Well, my daughter Jeannine, it was about, I don't know, 14, I think, at the time. And I had this old 1993 Jeep Cherokee. So she looked at me, and she was about as subtle as a trumpet solo. Okay, she looks at me and she goes, "Dad, your Jeep stinks." And so we got to go. I'm going to go buy you a deodorizer. This fan, I had forgotten about it, but 6 months after she transitioned, this fan surfaced in one of the remote nook and crannies of my garage. So every time that I see this fan, I can remember the day that we went to Pep Boys to get this deodorizing fan. It was summer. She was on my right hand side. I was on my left hand side. The person that waited on us was a young adult, probably no more than 17, sandy brown hair. So she picked this one out for me, and guess who paid for it? I did. But she had to get me out of the house. But every time I see this this fan, it brings me in real time to that moment, and I can connect with those memories of my daughter. This relates to a concept called continued bonds that was
Yes.
promoted, that was developed by Dennis Class, which is essentially maintaining and connecting through the memories of our loved ones through specific objects, through linking objects that promote memory, promote promote honoring, and that allows us to integrate our grief and move forward in our grief. So it's not about, we don't grieve through forgetting, we grieve through memory, and we grieve through, and that's how we integrate and move forward.
You know what? You just gave me chills. We actually talked about continued bonds in another one of my episodes because, um, you know, I I remember I was reading this book by Laura Lynn Jackson. It was called Signs, the Secret Language of the Universe. And I think we talked about that on our initial call, but I would like to share that because I remember in this book, she's a psychic medium, and she was talking about when you ask for a sign, be very specific. Don't just say, I want to see a butterfly, because if you see the butterfly, you're going to be like, well, there are butterflies everywhere. So you don't recognize it as the sign. So she said, be very specific in what you ask for. So in that book, in that chapter, I was talking to my dad and I said, Dad, like, what sign should I ask for? And in my head, I get this picture of those old gold library skeleton keys. You can picture it in your head. And so I drew a very bad drawing of it, by the way, but in on that chapter page. And then get to Arkansas. My friend picks me up. We go to the hotel. We have a nice night together. The next morning, she's getting ready. She's in the bathroom showering, and her keys are laying on her bed. Look over at the keys, and on her keychain is one of those library skeleton keys on her keychain. And I was like, oh my gosh. And then the person whose wedding we were going to, she called and, told us what the itinerary was for the day. And I said, you are not going to believe what just happened. And I told her that story. And she goes, oh, I wouldn't be surprised. She goes, did I ever tell you I used to have a website called the Golden Keys? And I'm like, oh my gosh. So I asked my dad for a sign, and he gave me a sign, and he reinforced it a couple
Hmm.
different times. I've
Yeah.
had that happen with my dog Toby. And so, I always say, like, my daughter just lost like one of her best friends for, I don't know, 15 years. And I said, talk to him,
Yeah.
ask him to send you a sign.
Hmm.
And he has been, because she's a little skeptical. She's in her mid 30s, right? So she's, a little skeptical. And I was skeptical too. But until these things started happening, and I'm like, oh, I can't deny it. Because I, like you, not maybe as much science, but I want some proof. I want some,
Yeah,
proof of this. But when it started happening in my own life, I can't question it anymore.
no. I mean, for me, I mean, it's just a part of my life now, and I don't question it. When I get a sign that says, "Oh, cool," my daughter's weighing in. There's a bittersweet thing about signs in early grief, however. When we get a sign, it's a reminder. It's bittersweet because it's great. We know our loved one is present. They're okay. That's the message that we get when we
And
get
we're
a sign
still
that,
connected.
and we're still connected, but they're not physically here.
Yeah.
But what I've learned is in the early grief, signs might have been a reminder of the lack of her physical presence, but her spiritual presence. Now signs is just, it reminds me of not what I've lost, but it reminds me of who I have. And that's how the whole conversation for me has shifted. Was it the relationship I ever envisioned having with my daughter? No. But is it a relationship that's based on pure love and based on no weights of the human contract? Yeah. And I can live with that. I can accept that. Although there are days, and I want your
Mm.
audience to be aware of, it's been 23 years. And though I'm at peace and I've accepted the fact that this is my life, my daughter's not a physical presence in it anymore, and that I've made that decision to re-engage in life and be of service, there are still days that I yearn for her presence. But
Of course.
it's it's not nothing I run away from. If anything, feeling that yearning, feeling that pang of sadness tells me that I can still feel and tells me that I can still love.
Yeah, and I think it also reminds us of how important it is to treasure and cherish the people that we love while they're here.
Yes.
I think we talked about this when we had our introductory call, but there was a situation in the city that I live in, and I didn't know this person, but she went to school with one of my friend's children, and she dropped her kids off to elementary school. I think she was probably 30s, 40s, went out for a run. She was doing something healthy for herself, and she got hit by a car. She got airlifted to the hospital, and she passed away. And that was that reminder to me that, do you think that when she walked out of her house, she thought she was going to say goodbye to her children for the last time?
Hmm.
Life is a precious gift. Before your daughter got diagnosed with that sarcoma, she didn't know that, like, she was only going to be here for a short while longer.
Hmm.
So I think it's also that reminder to be grateful for this life and to love the people that we love, and don't hold grudges or anger with the people that you love the most, because we never know. We don't have to be diagnosed with a terminal illness to understand how fragile life is and what a gift
Yeah.
it is.
And we shouldn't have to be, or our loved ones shouldn't have to be done for us to understand how life fragile is. But I think for most of us, we think we have time until we don't have time. And we
That
take for granted that our loved ones are going to be here every day. And every day isn't guaranteed. I mean, I thank God every day that I have the opportunity to wake up, to do what I love doing with teaching, to be of service where I can be of service, to be on podcasts, to do my podcast. But there are days that I say, why have I gotten the privilege to grow older when my
mm,
daughter did and other individuals like one of your daughter's best friends? Why did I get the privilege and they didn't? That's a question that there's not going to be any human law explanation for. But I'll ask it occasionally, but I know I'm not going to get anything that's going to make sense in human law.
right.
In, in sacred law, based on Brian Weiss's work, what I understand about past lives, are soul contracts for certain experiences in the physical realm, in the physical existence, and we contract to do those for a specific number of years. It could be 100 years. In my daughter's case, it was 18 years. So in sacred law, or in human law, 18 years wasn't enough time, nearly enough time, for my daughter to grow into the human experience. But 18 years in sacred law was enough time for her soul to grow into the human experience and teach what she needed to teach, learn what she needed to learn before she went on to her next existence. That took me years to figure that one out. And again, with the guidance of, as I mentioned, Patty Farino, who's a dear friend and mentor now. Um, I didn't understand that, but now I do. Um, and it aligns with Brian Weiss's work in terms of what he's done with past lives and what he learned from working with that one particular patient. So Um, so yeah,
Yeah, and again, like I sometimes I question things. I'll pray, I'll ask God, I'll ask the universe, I'll just say, why this or why that? And I always use the caveat as like maybe I'm not supposed to understand it in this lifetime,
hmm
but my eternal soul knows it. So I'm going with it. But that's a hard thing for our human minds to what's the word, surrender to, and
yeah,
kind of just say, what, there is a divine intelligence. I don't know exactly what you want to call it, but there is something greater than our human minds that knows better than us.
yeah. And there's you've just heard this saying before, we're not human beings living a spiritual experience, we're spiritual beings living a human experience. But sometimes our human experience gets in the way of our spiritual growth and we question. We question, well, why didn't things happen? Why did they happen this way? Why aren't things happening? I've been praying, I've been doing everything I can to manifest this. Why isn't this happen? And the way I look at it, Don, we're all on Spirit Central time. Where they are, where the spirit world is, they don't have a wristwatch. So it's going to be like it's going to be in their time. It may not be in our time, but it's going to be in their time.
I love that you said spirit central time. That just gave me goosebumps because I say divine time, but I like that better.
Yeah, SCT, Spirit Central time.
Well, I love that. And I again, I'm so sorry for your losses. That it doesn't take away the pain, but what you've turned that pain into is something beautiful. And sharing your story can help somebody else when they're in the throes of the darkest part,
Yep.
that this is why God gave you that experience so that you could be that voice to say, hey, you know what? I feel your pain. I hurt with you, feel your hurt, but know that it's spiritual central time.
Spirit Central time. If I got if I can, there's one more magnificent
I
sign I
love
got
it.
to share with you. So,
Please do.
probably in 2018, I was presenting at the Southern Humanities Conference. I think it was in Savannah, Georgia. I was presenting a paper, um, and I called to make a reservation at the hotel. And you call the reservation line, you get a random hotel, specialist that will do the. So I called and I s- and I said hello, and they said hello. This is Hilton Reservations. I'm Jeannine. Can I help you? Now, yeah, this gets better. Okay, this gets better. This goes into the category, Donna. I couldn't make this up, even if I tried. Now, my daughter spelled her name Jeannine, not a common spelling for Jeannine. So I'm talking to the woman who's booking the reservation. All of a sudden, I get this nudge saying, "Ask her how she spells her name." So I said, "Jeannine, this is going to sound like a really strange question, but can you tell me how you spell your name?" She goes, "Sure. Jeannine. I'm thinking this is going to be one hell of a trip, and it was.
Again, goosebumps, more goosebumps. And again, some people will say like, "Oh, that's woo woo," but I see that as a sign. I know that that's beautiful. So thank you for sharing that.
You're welcome.
Um, again, I could talk to you forever. I love our conversations. I love the books that you've recommended to me. I think what you're doing in this world is amazing, and you're honoring your daughter and her legacy. So her legacy is continuing on.
Well, and I'm only honoring her. I'm doing the work in honor of her and with her because she's very much a part of who I am. The best parts of her became the best parts of me, and that's how I've integrated my grief. And I tell my students, if you see a lot of young energy coming out, that's probably my daughter.
Well, I told you before, I think your students are very blessed to have you. If
Thank
I
you.
could sign up for any teacher, I would pick you every single time.
Oh, well, thank you.
But so we're kind of nearing the end. I want you to tell people where they can find you, where they can follow your podcast and where they can find you. And also, I want you to leave us with one nugget of information that you just want everybody to take away from this episode.
Okay. Well, my son calls me the world's oldest millennial, so you can probably find me anywhere on social media. You can find me on Facebook, you can find me on Instagram, you can find me on LinkedIn. I don't have a TikTok account yet. Although I've had a couple of my students said, you got to get a TikTok account. I said, well, I'm kind of holding off on that one, but
I've got
Facebook,
enough right now.
yeah, I got enough right now. Facebook, Instagram, um, and LinkedIn. Um, my website is davidrobertsmsw.com. If you want to take a look at my past writings and just get more information about me, you can do that. Um, the Teaching Journeys podcast that's on Apple, Spotify. It's all in other places you listen to podcasts and also on YouTube. My YouTube channel, I think my handle is at Dave Roberts 301, and I think everybody who knows me knows what the 301 stands for. Um, so you can find me and subscribe there. You're going to be a guest on my podcast in May. That's going to be one heck of a conversation.
I look
Um,
forward to it.
I think all we got to do is hit the record button and start talking. I think we're going to be fine. So.
100%.
So, but yeah, that's how people can get in touch with me. And as far as a nugget goes, there are two things regarding forgiveness. Now, if it's okay, I'm going to leave you two nuggets.
Oh,
Okay,
please leave as many as you want.
two nuggets. The first is one of my favorite quotes on forgiveness by the late great drummer of Rush, Neil Peart, who had his own tragedies in the 1997 and 1998. His daughter Selena died in a one-car accident in Toronto when she was 19, and his common-law wife died from stomach cancer, which he felt was related to the stress of losing their daughter. So in the space of 10 months, less than a year, the family that he created was no longer a part of him. So he went on a 55,000-mile road trip on his motorcycle, took a 4-year hiatus from the band to find himself. And one of the things he talked about was forgiveness. And this just really just, in one of the chapters, he said, there would be no life for me. There would be no peace for me unless I learned to forgive what life had done to me, learned to forgive others for being alive. And the part that got me was eventually forgive myself for being alive. And that was the three, the we talk about forgiveness, you forgive others for being alive, forgive myself for being alive. But whoever thought of forgiving the hand of fate for the cards it dealt? But he did all three of those. And that has always stayed with me as a quote on forgiveness. And I got chills just talking about that. He's influenced a lot of my writings, a lot of my thinking. His book, Ghostwriter Travels on the Healing Road, is a timeless classic. It talks about his journey, how he communed with nature to find himself. Just a brilliant read. And he was the best drummer of my generation. The second nugget, I found this as a meme on Facebook, is how sometimes we just beat ourselves up over things that we thought we should have known, we should have done. Well, there's another meme on forgiveness that I saw that learn to forgive yourself for things that only time could have taught you.
Yeah.
And and so often, especially when a loved one dies, whether it's a pet, whether it's a human being, somebody close to us, we we beat ourselves up and say, what could I have done more to prevent what had happened? What if I had just said I love that person one more time? Had you had known or had a crystal ball, hey, you might have done it. But then again, maybe you wouldn't have. But as time goes on, learn to forgive yourself for those things that only time could have taught you. You could not have known any of this. You could not have known that. You were going to say goodbye to your loved one and to realize it and didn't realize that was the last time you were going to see him. You couldn't have known that. So forgive yourself. Show yourself some grace. So those two quotes on forgiveness are two nuggets I want to leave your audience with today, Don.
Thank you, Dave. I think that those are really good nuggets. And again, when you lose somebody, there are the what if I did this? What if I did this differently? What if, would that have changed? And that isn't helpful
No.
because it is what it was,
Hmm.
right? So thank you for reminding us that because again, grief is going to touch every one of us in this lifetime. That is just part of the human condition. And how do we move on from that? And how do we um, celebrate our loved ones after they're no longer here? And then
Hmm.
also remember that we are still connected. And again, I used to, a long time ago, used to think, once you're gone and there's nothing left. But through my experiences, I know that there is something that lasts, and love
Yep.
is that cord that keeps us connected. So stay in
Exactly.
love, and tell like everybody you love, make sure that there's never a question how much they are loved and cherished and how much, they mean to you.
Yeah. And even if you don't say it, show it.
Yes, yes, all the time, every time, even if they're annoying you.
Yeah, which can tend to happen.
It does. It does. We're all human, right? We're
Hmm.
all having a human experience. So thank you so much for sharing your story, your wisdom, your heart, and all of your experiences with us. Again, we're gonna have more of these conversations. I absolutely think you are a light in this world, and I'm so grateful that we're connected.
Yeah, I think we'll be talking more. I got that sense. This will be one of several.
Yes, absolutely, absolutely. Well, thank you, Dave. Again, we will have all of your contact information in the show notes. And thank you all for watching The Secrets of Being, and we will see you next time. Thank you for tuning in to the Secrets of Being podcast. We appreciate your time and support. If you enjoyed this episode, please like, share, and subscribe to stay updated with more inspiring content. For further inspiration, visit thesecretsofbeing.com and join our community. Until next time, stay inspired and keep unlocking the secrets of being.